All right, so this recording is going to go over a graphic organizer on the progressive presidents. So the graphic organizer that you should be filling out while you're watching this recording will be posted on the message board and sent attached to the webmail along with this recording. So today we're going to look at President Roosevelt, President Taft, and President Wilson. Okay, so President Roosevelt becomes the 26th President of the United States. And he is the first progressive president to be elected into office. So President Roosevelt really focused on fair business practices. He wanted to regulate businesses and make sure that they were being fair to all people involved. President Roosevelt actually becomes known as the trust buster. So he starts regulating trusts pretty heavily. He breaks them up if they're not doing business correctly and ensures that they are using those fair business practices. President Roosevelt also begins a program known as the Square Deal. And the Square Deal was really focused on equal opportunities for everyone in the United States. Okay, he was really focused on making sure everyone had equal opportunities in all aspects of their life. He also starts to enact some legislation to protect consumers. So things like making sure their food is coming from a healthy place, making sure it's being prepared properly, making sure that they're taking safe medications, all of those things that had never really been regulated before, Roosevelt starts protecting consumers in those aspects. And the last thing I want to talk about under President Roosevelt is conservation. He was really interested in conserving our natural resources, in protecting our wildlife. He sets up national parks in the United States. So he was really concerned with conservation and making sure we were going to have all of those things available for generations to come. So after President Roosevelt serves his terms, President Taft becomes our 27th president. Okay, and he takes over the presidency and he continues a lot of Roosevelt's policies. He continues regulating businesses. He continues enacting fair business policies. So he really continues making the business aspect of the United States better, just as Roosevelt had done before him. A different thing that President Taft does is he actually increases tariffs, okay? And remember, a tariff is a tax on imported goods. So President Taft supports higher tariffs because he really wants to see people buying goods from the United States, supporting our own economy, and keeping that economy growing. So that's something different about President Taft. While he does support a lot of Roosevelt's policies, he also starts encouraging people to buy American-made goods. Another thing that President Taft does is he starts regulating safety in the workplace. So he takes a look and sees that, factories and other businesses, specifically mines, aren't the safest place to work in the United States, and he starts enacting new safety regulations to try to improve the quality of work conditions for Americans during his presidency as well. Now, the last progressive president that we're going to talk about is President Wilson. And President Wilson is kind of a unique case here. He does become the 28th president, okay? And President Wilson is a Democrat. There had been a split in the Republican Party, which kind of paved the way for President Wilson to become elected as the 28th president. And President Wilson starts something called the New Freedom Program. So his ideas on how to run the United States and what to do during his presidency are known as the New Freedom Program. He does also start to fight for fair practices in business. So he's going to continue these progressive policies that have been started all the way over here under President Roosevelt. President Wilson is going to continue some of those things during his presidency. One thing he does do when he becomes president, though, is he lowers the tariffs. Okay? President Taft increased them. President Wilson is going to lower them again. And President Wilson establishes some new federal departments. While he is president, he starts the Federal Reserve System, which helps regulate banking and our money in the United States. He also sets up the Federal Trade Commission. So both of those things are progressive ideas. He starts regulating our economy, our banking, and our money in the United States, and also starts regulating trade, how we conduct trade internally in the United States, how we conduct trade with other countries around the world. That is all regulated under the Federal Trade Commission. So these three progressive presidents had some pretty radical ideas. For the first time, we're seeing some of these in the United States. And these ideas are not going to go away. They're started by President Roosevelt, continued all the way through President Wilson, and they are going to carry on and influence how we get to where we are today in our economy and our society.